In 1995, 15-year-old Nicole Van Denk vanished into the shadows of Eindhoven. Her case gathered dust for 15 years until a stepbrother's sudden confession sparked an arrest. Yet, he was no killer. His admission was a calculated gamble, a desperate move to force an exhumation for forensic testing, which eventually unmasked the predator's true face. Nicole entered the world in Western Germany on July 4, 1980, in a quiet town called Erklands. Her mother, Angelica, later wed Ad van der K, and they relocated to the Netherlands, where the child took her stepfather's name. The marriage fractured by 1989, ending in a divorce that saw Ad granted sole custody of young Nicole. The trail went cold on October 6, 1995, when the 15-year-old simply disappeared. She had been living under her grandmother's roof in Eindhoven at the time she went missing, though she remained close with her father and his new wife, who shared the same city. Despite the heavy shadow of her mother's recent suicide, Nicole appeared determined to build a future for herself. She had landed a part-time position at a local shopping center bakery, often dedicating her weekends to the grind. Between classes and her social life, she stayed busy. That Friday morning, she was expected at the shop for a shift. Setting out from her grandmother's house on her bicycle, she pedaled toward work, but she never arrived. Law enforcement mobilized quickly, assigning 15 officers to a task force focused on scouring the area for the missing girl. At 6 that evening, a breakthrough occurred. Her bike was pulled from the DML River near a treatment facility. Moments later, specialized dive teams from the fire department plunged into the murky depths, searching in vain for any trace of her. The days that followed offered little more than silence. Investigators began a meticulous canvass, retracing her final weeks through interviews with her family and close friends. They hunted for any grievance or conflict in her history, but every path led to a dead end. No obvious crime scene existed, yet the specter of a violent encounter loomed large in the minds of the police. By October 9th, 72 hours had passed since her disappearance. Civil unrest units joined the hunt after 5 youths were jailed in Eindhoven for a series of violent public outbursts. Rumors swirled that these delinquents were linked to her fate, given their history of harassing people along the Vansen path. This bicycle trail wound through the city, cutting directly through the zone where Nicole was last seen. Suspicions deepened because some of the detained minors were classmates of the victim. To explore this lead, 45 riot officers were deployed to comb the dense undergrowth of a specific forested area, called Ecart Woods, a stretch of land behind the plant where her bicycle had been found abandoned. While aircraft surveyed the local waterways from above, detectives began interrogating students at her school for clues. As days passed, 15 fresh leads trickled in, prompting a desperate search of the drainage tunnels snaking through the riverbanks. This search was triggered by a tip given to her father, Ad van den Hurk, and his wife, Jolanda, by a psychic. Other psychics offered their visions to the authorities, though none of their supernatural insights yielded real results. 11 days later, on October 17th, one last sweep of the DML River led officials to believe she was no longer in the water. The next morning, a cryptic anonymous letter arrived, capturing the attention of the investigators. It described a suspicious vehicle idling near the path that morning and provided a specific license plate number. Although it seemed like a breakthrough, the lead eventually withered away, dismissed for reasons never fully explained. On October 19th, her school bag was discarded by a road near the Eindhoven Canal. Detectives crossed into Germany, questioning her mother's family for any potential clues. A massive operation launched the next day, utilizing cadaver dogs and foot patrols along the canal's southern bank. Despite fresh clues, the gears of justice turned with agonizing slowness. Officials admitted that the discovery of the backpack failed to generate the wave of tips they had anticipated. A televised appeal on October 24th triggered a massive influx of potential leads from the public. Investigators initially felt a sense of momentum following the broadcast, noting that 40 of the 80 new tips showed real promise. However, by early November, the inquiry took a baffling turn. Police pivoted to a theory that the 15-year-old was a runaway, not a victim. This shift was fueled by a complete lack of physical evidence at the presumed crime scene, prompting authorities to aggressively re-examine those within the girl's inner circle. Intelligence soon suggested Nicole had crossed into Germany, bolstered by a late October sighting. A witness claimed to have spotted a girl matching her description on October 6th, the very day she vanished, at a filling station in Venlo, just miles from the border. Nicole's father vehemently rejected this theory, sensing something far more sinister. Conversely, her German grandmother believed the runaway narrative, convinced she was seeking happiness elsewhere. The illusion of a safe escape shattered on November 22nd, when the investigation turned into a recovery. A hiker discovered a teenager's body in the brush between Lierop and Mierlo. It was Nicole. The autopsy revealed a brutal struggle, fractured jaws, and defensive wounds to her hands. She had been sexually assaulted. The killing blow was a blade driven into her chest. On November 28, 1995, 1,000 mourners gathered for her final farewell. By January 1996, the task force was gutted, their resources redirected elsewhere. Only 4 detectives remained to sift through the dwindling pile of civilian reports. A month later, a strange connection emerged. An Eindhoven teen was busted for smuggling in Miami. During a high-stakes interrogation by federal agents, she claimed an Eindhoven drug syndicate responsible for Nicole's death had coerced her into the trade. While Nicole's father found the girl's story credible, the authorities remained deeply skeptical. By March, police publicly dismissed her testimony, citing a total lack of corroborating evidence. The investigation veered back toward the family on May 22nd with the arrest of her stepbrother, Andy. Detectives grilled him for 5 days straight under heavy suspicion, but with no physical link to the crime. He was eventually cleared and released. The spotlight then shifted to the patriarch, Ad, who was taken into custody on June 7th. Like his son, he was detained for nearly a week before being eliminated from the inquiry. Ad later described the experience as a permanent stain on his reputation, despite his innocence. He told the press he tried to weaponize the media circus surrounding his arrest. He figured his notoriety could keep his daughter's face in the news, hoping someone might recognize her. But the passage of time only sharpened his resentment toward the system. In 2005, Ad launched a scathing attack on the police for their bungled investigation. He was haunted by the way the state had painted his family as conspirators. He told local reporters the failure was total, claiming the lead investigator was essentially an amateur. While he searched the woods with a flashlight, police were busy interrogating the grieving family. He believed this tunnel vision allowed the real killer to walk free and destroy evidence. Andy, however, looked back at his younger self with a more objective, if troubled, lens. He admitted to being a volatile youth who ran with the wrong crowd and hindered the police. Given his behavior at 21, he understood why the law had come knocking at his door. By 2005, Andy had relocated to England, seeking a fresh start far from the tragedy. His father had moved to Spain after his music career and marriage both collapsed under the weight of the case. For 15 years, the file gathered dust in a storage room, a forgotten tragedy. A brief review in 2004 yielded nothing, leaving the mystery as cold as ever. That was until March 8, 2011. Her stepbrother, Andy, took to Facebook with a chilling admission. He had killed her and intended to surrender to authorities in Stevenage, England. By March 30th, following his capture by British police, he was flown back to the Netherlands to face intense interrogation. Yet, the digital confession remained the sole thread connecting Andy to the crime. Lacking physical evidence or circumstantial links, detectives were forced to release him after 5 days in custody. Once free, Andy retracted everything, claiming the false confession was a desperate ploy to force the cold case back into the spotlight. He gambled that public outcry would finally compel the authorities to resume their hunt for the real killer. "I needed her exhumed for DNA," he later explained, acknowledging the reckless nature of his self-incrimination. To force their hand, he played the villain, telling the police exactly what they wanted to hear. Underneath the deception, he was simply a brother who missed his sister every single day. The gamble paid off that September when officials ordered the exhumation of Nicole's remains to search for microscopic traces of her attacker. On September 13th, a breakthrough occurred. Forensic teams successfully recovered a foreign DNA profile from the girl's remains. Nicole's father provided a sample for elimination, and by November 16th, she was finally returned to her final resting place. Analysis uncovered 2 distinct genetic markers, one belonging to her boyfriend and a second unidentified male profile. Investigators pivoted, scouring old records from September 2000 for similar predatory patterns in the region. They found a matching MO in Valkens, 5 miles from Eindhoven, where a cyclist had been abducted and assaulted at knife point. The predator responsible for that attack had been convicted and imprisoned back in 2001. Sensing a connection, the lead investigator requested a direct comparison between the unknown sample and that convict's DNA. On January 14, 2014, the shadow finally had a name. A 46-year-old suspect was apprehended after his DNA proved to be a perfect match for the evidence found on Nicole. Masked by Dutch privacy laws, he was known to the public only as Jos de G. His history was dark: 3 rape convictions, and a history of court-ordered psychiatric treatment for his violent sexual offenses. While the genetic match was a cornerstone for the prosecution, the defense prepared to dismantle the forensic narrative. Attorneys argued that since the body had been exposed to the elements for 7 weeks, the evidence was compromised. This prolonged exposure, they claimed, created a significant risk of environmental contamination and biological decay. They pointed out that 1990s collection methods were primitive compared to the refined standards of the 2010s. Forensic experts countered, asserting that 2 clear, independent genetic profiles were undeniably present in the samples. Still, minor inconsistencies in the data led to defense theories regarding a potential third individual at the scene. Scientists dismissed these anomalies as the natural result of DNA breaking down over 2 decades. Ultimately, the Dutch Supreme Court ruled that the existence of a third party was purely speculative and highly improbable. The legal consensus remained firm despite the technical debate. The presence of his DNA, coupled with his violent predatory history, made him the only logical suspect for the murder. Desperate, the defense pivoted, suggesting that Nicole might have had a secret, consensual encounter with the suspect before her death. Faced with legal technicalities, prosecutors adjusted their strategy, pursuing charges of rape and manslaughter instead of premeditated murder. The suspect initially denied ever knowing the girl or being in her presence during those fatal hours. But when the DNA results were laid bare, he changed his story, suggesting a consensual liaison had occurred. The judicial proceedings finally commenced in November 2015. The trial stalled when a surprise witness emerged, claiming the suspect had boasted about killing Nicole years earlier. A local report described the witness's chilling account of the man's cold eyes as he confessed to the slaying. According to the witness, he admitted to the killing after she had allegedly mocked his physical appearance following the assault. The defense dismissed this testimony as a greedy grab for the substantial reward money attached to the conviction. As the case dragged into 2016, experts were called back to revalidate the forensic findings once more. That April, testimony revealed the statistical probability of the DNA belonging to anyone else was 1 in over 2 million. The long-awaited conclusion of the legal battle wouldn't arrive until October 2016. Demanding 14 years, prosecutors dismantled the idea of a consensual affair, noting Nicole was a young woman with a full life. She was committed to her partner and her studies, leaving no room for a secret, violent stranger in her world. On November 21st, the court convicted the G for the sexual assault of Nicole, yet cleared him of homicide under the theory that unidentified DNA suggested an accomplice. The initial judgment handed him a 5-year term behind bars. Leniency was granted because of his history in psychiatric facilities during the homicide investigation. Despite the early setbacks, prosecutors moved swiftly to challenge the acquittal for her death. That legal battle reopened in late August 2018, leading to a reversal by October. Ultimately, the G received 12 years for both crimes, a ruling solidified by the High Court in 2020. Those are the known facts. We invite you to share your theories on this case below. If this investigation resonated with you, please engage with the video to help us continue. Remain vigilant and keep searching for the truth. Until the next case files, the story of Nicole van den Hurk is more than just a tragic entry in a police ledger. It is a haunting heartbeat frozen in time. For over 20 years, her name was a whisper in the wind, a file gathering dust while a predator walked among us. But her legacy teaches us one undeniable truth. Justice, though it may stumble, never truly sleeps. We see the raw power of devotion in her brother, Andy. His confession wasn't an act of malice, but a desperate scream for help, a calculated sacrifice to force the world to look at his sister one more time. It serves as a profound reminder that the bonds of family are stronger than the silence of a cold case. Love, when pushed to the brink, will play the villain just to unmask the truth. This case is a call to our collective conscience. It reminds us that cold is merely a temperature, not a final verdict. Every victim was once a daughter with a dream, a sister with a laugh, and a future stolen. We must never allow the passage of time to erode our demand for answers. Let Nicole's story be our vow of vigilance. Let us remember that, as long as we refuse to forget, the light of truth will eventually pierce even the deepest shadows.